When I received my end-of-year bonus, $100,000, it felt like a victory I had been chasing for years. All those late nights at the office, skipped vacations, and missed weekends with friends had finally amounted to something tangible. I planned to use that money wisely, pay off debts, set aside a chunk for my son's education, and finally start looking at houses. For once, I felt like life was moving in the right direction. But before I could even celebrate, my parents sat me down with a request that didn't feel like a request at all. They told me I should hand the entire bonus over to my sister, Claire, so she could have the grand wedding she'd been dreaming of. My father's words were sharp. "Michael, family comes before everything. Claire deserves this. You'll have plenty of opportunities to earn more." I remember staring at him in disbelief. "You're asking me to give up $100,000? The money I worked myself into the ground for? Just so she can have a fancy wedding?" My mother didn't blink. "Not asking, expecting. You're her brother, and brothers make sacrifices. This is what family does." In that moment, the joy of my accomplishment drained away, replaced by anger I had never felt so strongly before. My name is Michael, and I am 38 years old. Right now, I'm realizing the bitter truth. To my parents, I am not a son but a provider, someone they can squeeze dry for the sake of my sister. That demand was more than unfair. It was the crack that would shatter our family forever. The confrontation happened at Sunday dinner, a place that used to mean comfort and family, but that night it felt like enemy territory. My parents sat at the head of the table, while Claire, my sister, beamed as if the money was already in her bank account. That I pushed my plate aside and said firmly, "I'm not giving you my bonus. I earned it. It's for me and my future, not for a wedding." Claire scoffed, tossing her napkin on the table. "Michael, don't be dramatic. You're single. You don't have the same responsibilities I do. This wedding is once in a lifetime. You can't put a price on that." I glared at her. "You're right. You can't put a price on it. Which is why I won't. $100,000 is my blood, sweat, and years of sacrifice. I'm not handing it over like it means nothing." My father slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. Claire is your sister. Family is about sacrifice, and if you can't understand that, maybe you don't belong at this table." His words cut deep, but I refused to back down. If family is about sacrifice, why is it always me? Why am I the one expected to give everything while Claire gets everything handed to her? For the first time, the room went quiet. My mother's lips tightened, Claire rolled her eyes, and my father's face hardened. But I saw something flicker there too. Anger mixed with the realization that I wasn't bending this time. I stood up, my voice steady. "I'm not paying for her wedding. And if that makes me the bad son, then so be it." The silence that followed was louder than any shouting match. In that moment, I knew this fight wasn't just about money. It was about years of favoritism, years of being treated like a backup plan, and I had finally drawn a line. The week after that dinner felt like living under siege. My phone rang constantly, calls from my parents, texts from Claire, even messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Every single one of them carried the same message: "Michael, do the right thing. Family first." At first, I ignored them. But then the guilt trip started. My mother left me a voicemail in tears. "We raised you better than this. Claire deserves her moment. You're destroying the family by being so selfish." My father's tone was harsher. "100,000 is nothing compared to what we've given you all your life. It's time you gave something back." And Claire? She was relentless. She sent me photos of venues, dresses, menus, each with a note like, "This is what you're taking away from me." She even wrote, "If you cared about me, you'd want me to be happy." The pressure wasn't just emotional, it became public. At a cousin's birthday, whispers followed me around the room. One uncle muttered, "He's letting money ruin his family." Another relative pulled me aside and said, "Michael, just pay. It's easier than fighting everyone." I felt cornered, suffocated, like I was the villain in a story I hadn't written. But late one night, sitting at my desk with all their messages buzzing on my phone, I realized something. This wasn't about a wedding. It was about control. My parents had spent my whole life making me feel like my role was to sacrifice, to keep Claire happy at my expense. This bonus was just the biggest opportunity yet, and as the pressure mounted, so did my resolve. For the first time, I thought, what if I walk away from all of them? It was a terrifying thought, but also the first one that felt like freedom. It all came to a head one Saturday evening when my parents invited me over, saying we needed to talk this through as a family. I almost didn't go, but part of me still hoped they might finally understand my side. When I walked in, Claire was already there, smiling smugly as if the matter was already settled. My parents sat across the table, their faces grave. My father started. "Michael, this has gone on long enough. You're being stubborn, and it's tearing this family apart. Just hand over the bonus and end this." I clenched my fists. "You mean give up $100,000 of my hard-earned money so Claire can throw a party? That's what's tearing this family apart, not me." Claire snapped, her voice rising. "Party? It's my wedding, Michael. This is the most important day of my life. You're ruining it just because you're jealous I finally get something special." That word, jealous, set me off. I slammed my hand on the table. "Jealous? I've worked myself to the bone for years while you've been coddled, spoiled, and handed everything. And now you think you're entitled to my future too? No, not this time." My mother's voice cracked as she tried to play peacemaker, but her words only made it worse. "Michael, you don't understand. Claire deserves this. You're strong, you'll bounce back. She only has this one chance." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "Do you even hear yourselves? You've spent my whole life making me second to her, and now you want to erase my biggest achievement for her one chance? I won't do it. Not today, not ever." The room went silent. My father's face turned red with anger. "If you walk out of here without agreeing, don't bother coming back." I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. "Then you've already made your choice. You chose her over me years ago. I'm just finally choosing myself." And with that, I walked out of their house, knowing something inside me had shattered for good. The days after that confrontation were some of the loneliest of my life. My phone, once buzzing with messages and calls, went eerily quiet. When it did ring, it wasn't to check on me. It was relatives lecturing me about how I had shamed the family, or accusing me of being cold-hearted at work. I tried to keep my head down, but the whispers followed me even outside the office. A cousin had posted on Facebook about selfish brothers who put money over family, and it didn't take long before everyone knew who she was talking about. Friends sent me screenshots, asking what was happening. The smear campaign had begun. Claire leaned in harder, too. She messaged me late one night. "If you don't step up, you'll never be welcome in this family again. Mom and Dad are disgusted with you. Do you really want to lose us over money?" Every word hit like a punch, but I refused to reply. Because deep down, I knew the truth. It wasn't about money. It was about years of being treated like a resource instead of a son. Still, the weight of the isolation was crushing. Birthdays passed without an invitation. I heard my parents hosted dinners, family gatherings, and celebrations, but I was never included. For the first time, I realized they weren't bluffing. In their eyes, I had ceased to exist. One evening, I sat in my apartment surrounded by silence, scrolling through old photos, holidays, birthdays, family trips. I saw myself in the background of so many of them, always smiling, always present, always giving. And now, all of that counted for nothing because I finally said no. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. But beneath the pain, something else grew: clarity. They had cut me out to punish me, but maybe that was the gift I didn't know I needed. About a month after the fallout, when I had nearly convinced myself I was completely alone, I got a message that stopped me cold. It was from my cousin Rachel, the quiet one, the one who usually stayed out of family drama. Her text was short. "Michael, I know what they did to you was wrong. Can we talk?" We met at a small cafe downtown. She slid into the booth across from me, looking nervous, but the determination in her eyes was unmistakable. "I've stayed quiet for too long," she said, "but I can't watch them tear you down like this." I leaned forward, my chest tight. "So you believe me? You don't think I'm selfish?" She shook her head firmly. "Selfish? Michael, you've done more for this family than anyone. I remember when Claire needed help with her college tuition, you pitched in. When our grandmother's medical bills piled up, you paid most of them. You've always been the one holding everything together. And now they want to take the one thing you finally earned for yourself? It's disgusting." Her words nearly broke me. After weeks of silence, judgment, and rejection, finally someone saw me. Then she pulled out her phone and showed me something I hadn't expected: screenshots of a group chat where my parents and Claire had been talking behind my back. Claire bragged about the vendors she had already booked, saying, "Michael will cave. He always does." My mother replied, "He has no choice. If he doesn't give in, he'll lose us." I felt my stomach twist, but at the same time, a spark lit inside me. It wasn't just about favoritism. It was premeditated manipulation. They had never seen me as a son with boundaries. I was their safety net, their scapegoat, their ATM. Rachel reached across the table, her voice soft but firm. You don't deserve this, Michael. Cutting them off might feel painful, but maybe it's the only way you'll ever be free. That night, as I drove home, her words stayed with me. For the first time, I realized that walking away didn't mean losing family. It meant choosing peace. Rachel's screenshots burned in my pocket like a weapon waiting to be drawn. So when I heard there would be a big family gathering at my uncle's house, a reunion I hadn't even been invited to, I knew I had to show up. Not for acceptance, not for forgiveness, but to finally put the truth out there. I walked in unannounced. Conversations went quiet, forks froze midair, and every pair of eyes turned toward me. My parents sat stiff on the couch, Claire beside them in a sparkling dress like she was the star of the evening. My father was the first to speak. Michael, you shouldn't be here. I ignored him and stepped into the center of the room. No, I should be here. Because all of you have heard one side of the story, the side where I'm selfish, greedy, and heartless. But you haven't heard mine. I pulled out my phone and projected the screenshots onto the TV, thanks to Rachel's help. Gasps filled the room as the words appeared. Claire bragging about how I would cave. My mother insisting I had no choice. My father writing that I would regret it if I didn't hand it over. Claire jumped to her feet, her voice shrill. This is private. You had no right. I cut her off. No right. You had no right to plan my life, to demand my money, to treat me like I exist only to make you comfortable. For years, I've been the one paying, sacrificing, bending over backwards. And when I finally drew a line, you tried to break me. The room was dead silent. A few cousins looked down at their laps, ashamed. My uncle muttered under his breath, "Unbelievable." My mother tried to speak, her voice trembling. "Michael, we only wanted—" "No," I said firmly. "What you wanted was control. And this is where it ends." I turned and walked out, leaving the stunned silence behind me. For the first time, I didn't feel like the weak one. I felt free. The morning after the reunion, my phone lit up with messages. Some were furious. My mother accusing me of humiliating her, Claire calling me cruel and jealous. But others were quiet admissions from cousins and relatives. I had no idea. "I'm sorry for believing them." Or, "Michael, you did the right thing." For the first time in months, I felt the tide shifting. The story wasn't just theirs anymore. The truth had spread, and it was undeniable. My parents didn't take it well. My father called, his voice tight with rage. "You've disgraced this family. You think exposing us makes you strong? It just proves how ungrateful you are." I let him finish, then said calmly, "What I did was finally show everyone who you really are. And if that's disgrace, then maybe you created it, not me." He hung up without another word. Claire went even further. She blasted me on social media, posting pictures of her dream wedding plans alongside captions like, "My own brother stole my happiness." But the comments weren't the wall of support she expected. Some defended her, yes, but others questioned why she felt entitled to $100,000 of her brother's earnings. The cracks in her perfect narrative grew wider every day. Meanwhile, Rachel called me. Her voice was full of relief. "You did it, Michael. You finally stood up to them. I know it must hurt, but you needed to cut those chains." And she was right. The pain was still there. Years of being dismissed, of craving approval that never came. But beneath that pain, I felt lighter. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living under their expectations. That night, as I sat alone in my apartment, I thought about the silence that had once terrified me. Now it felt like peace. And I realized, maybe losing them wasn't a loss at all. Maybe it was the beginning of finally living for myself. The weeks that followed were filled with half-hearted attempts from my parents to regain control. My mother left long voicemails dripping with guilt. "Michael, we're still your family. Don't throw us away over one mistake." My father tried intimidation instead. "You'll regret this when you're older and alone." Claire, of course, kept demanding. "You owe me, Michael. Without you, my wedding is ruined. You're pathetic." But by then, their words no longer pierced me the way they used to. Something inside me had shifted after that confrontation. I finally saw them not as the family I wished they were, but as the people they truly were. People who had drained me for years and only saw me as valuable when I was giving to. I sat down one night with my phone and a heavy heart. One by one, I blocked them: Claire, my parents, even the relatives who had chosen to side with them. I deleted the group chats that had once chained me with guilt and obligation. For the first time, my phone was silent, not from isolation, but from choice. That it wasn't easy. As I pressed that final button, a part of me grieved. These were the people who had raised me, the ones I had once believed would always be in my corner. But the truth was undeniable: they had never really been on my side. Cutting them off wasn't betrayal. It was survival. That I looked around my apartment that night, small but mine, quiet but safe, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months: peace. The final cut wasn't just about removing them from my life. It was about reclaiming it for myself. It has been months since I cut them off, and my life is quieter, but also freer than it has ever been. I no longer wake up to guilt-ridden messages or demands that I sacrifice everything for someone else's happiness. I've started focusing on myself, my career, my health, and the future I want to build. First, I thought the silence would crush me. Instead, it became my greatest relief. Without their constant voices in my ear, I learned who I was without their control. I discovered that peace is worth more than any forced idea of family loyalty. My parents and Claire, they still live in the same cycle, blaming me for their problems, painting themselves as victims. But that's their story, not mine. My story is about finally breaking free, about realizing that blood ties mean nothing if respect and love aren't there. My name is Michael. I am 38 years old, and when my parents tried to force me to hand over $100,000 to my sister, I chose myself instead. It cost me my family, but it gave me back my life. And if you've stayed with me until the end, thank you. If there's one piece of advice I can leave you with, it's this: never let guilt chain you to people who only take. Family should build you up, not break you down. If my story resonated with you, please subscribe and leave a like. It means more than you know. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and remember, sometimes walking away is the only way to truly live.